Picture this, you're Nintendo in like 2014. I know, scary, right? Coming off the massive successes that were the DS and Wii, you're feeling good about their successors at first. Then the Wii U isn't selling well at all, the fans aren't happy, you're not happy, and third parties aren't happy, so they stop supporting you. The 3DS is faring a lot better, but it's still not doing as well as its predecessor, and mobile gaming seems to be taking over. So you realize you need something new, something that hasn't really been done in the industry before. Technology seems to be advanced enough to finally introduce to the world a handheld console hybrid with the Nintendo Switch. No gimmicks, just a home console you can take with you on the go. It's a concept that people can immediately understand and find intriguing, so it was successful. In 2017, the Nintendo Switch launched to immediate and great success, and Nintendo never looked back. But us fans, we did. Now don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the Nintendo Switch. It's still my favorite Nintendo system of all time, despite its flaws. However, I think a lot of those flaws stem from the fact that the Switch kinda killed handheld gaming, at least as we knew it back then. With the release of this console, we've entered a new era of gaming on the go, for better or for worse. Regardless of your opinion here, the Switch drastically changed the handheld gaming market, and it undoubtedly worked for Nintendo. But now that the Switch is at the end of its life, a lot of people are thinking about the era Nintendo left behind by creating this new console, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. This is how the Nintendo Switch killed handheld gaming. The idea of a home console handheld hybrid system is immediately a very interesting and genius idea. Nintendo was kind of stretching itself thin by having two major platforms for their games, the 3DS and the Wii U. This is also when handheld systems were starting to require more and more development time and resources, and Nintendo wasn't doing that well sales-wise. My problem with the Switch isn't the fact that it's a home console handheld hybrid, it's the fact that it has sort of an identity crisis by not leaning into either side well enough. Ideally, the Nintendo Switch would lean into both sides, including features that make sense with a handheld, while also providing a more hardcore home console system for those fans. However, I don't think the Switch does enough for either side to truly say that it's the best of both worlds. Let's look at the home console side first. The Switch is missing a lot of mainstay features in modern home consoles like voice chat or messaging friends. I mean, it's 2024 and the Switch still uses friend codes. Home consoles are also used for streaming, and while the Switch has some streaming apps, it's missing a lot more of them. Like seriously, why has it been 7 years and the Switch doesn't have Netflix of all things? Mind you, these are all features the Wii U had with Wii U Chat, Miiverse, usernames, and a plethora of streaming apps. The Switch also doesn't have any customizations for performance or graphic modes, which is a mainstay feature of home consoles nowadays. There's really only two modes, and it's just that there's a lower resolution when you're in handheld and a higher resolution when you're docked. Frame drops and all. Not to mention the fact that the Nintendo Switch home screen is just kinda bland in general. Other than the games you have in the eShop, there's only like the news tab, I guess? And then if you look on the handheld side of things, the Switch is honestly not that convenient to carry around. Something that practically all Nintendo handhelds before the Switch had was the fact that they were small and compact. You could easily fit these systems in your pocket, or maybe even multiple if you want to get freaky. They're also easy to just throw in a bag for a day out or a road trip or something. Most people, including myself, still have cases for our systems to hold things like our extra games and accessories, but generally, you'd be fine just raw dogging it with the system on its own. The Switch, on the other hand, I feel like if I breathe the wrong way, the thing is gonna fall apart, much less put it in a bag on its own, or, God forbid, try to put it in my pocket. A case is almost required for this already bulky system, which just means it's taking up even more space. Now, this has never been a huge issue for me personally, but it can be inconvenient at times, and I know a lot of other people have problems with this. The Switch is also not as comfortable to play in handheld mode as I think it should be. I mean, the Joy-Con controllers are fine, but the system doesn't feel great to hold in the hand like most other Nintendo handhelds do. The Switch Lite kinda fixes this. Because it's an exclusively handheld system, it feels a lot better to play on, which honestly just makes me question the Switch's decisions even more. However, I do think the Pro Controller is one of the best controllers of all time, so at least there's that. Themes are another big feature of the 3DS that is completely gone with the Switch. There were so many different themes to choose from a variety of different games. Now, the Switch technically does have themes, but it's just light and dark. Obviously, having a light and dark mode is a good thing, but at that point, why not just call it that instead of themes? Everything else that has a light and dark mode just calls it that, which just makes it feel out of place here. Calling it themes feels like they were trying to tease us here. Lastly, the Switch is missing a lot of those goofy time wasters the DS and 3DS had. Those systems had download play to play multiplayer with friends, PictoChat, Street Pass, and things like Face Raiders. Do you remember Face Raiders? Of course you don't. But again, the Nintendo Switch has what? The News tab? None of these flaws I've mentioned were really deal-breaking for me in terms of liking the Switch, but I understand that for a lot of people it's a big problem. Even the bigger stuff like the Joy-Cons being the Joy-Cons don't detract enough for me to dislike the system altogether. As long as the Switch has games I want to play, I'm always gonna be on board. And Nintendo has had no problem pumping out stuff I want to play on this thing. But on the other hand, a lot of these features are mainstays in home consoles or were on previous Nintendo systems that did well, which makes me question why a lot of it is missing here with the Switch. Overall, it's clear that Nintendo wanted to be pretty safe with the Switch. They wanted to attract a new audience by keeping things simple, which I can respect. I mean, they still had games for the 3DS coming out years after the Switch release just in case things went south. At first, it didn't seem like they were planning for the Switch to entirely replace their handheld market, but then it did so well that it did replace that market. The Nintendo Switch to me doesn't know exactly what it wants to be. It has a lot of features reminiscent of both home consoles and handhelds, but doesn't represent either enough to be the best of both worlds in my opinion. The Switch has the slogan of play anytime, anywhere, signaling that the system is a handheld. But then Nintendo treats every game release like it's a huge home console title. Oh yeah, the games. Nintendo has always been developing for two systems ever since the Game Boy was released back in 1989. Each Nintendo generation has come with a home console and a handheld to go alongside it. However, as I mentioned earlier, Nintendo saw during the 3DS and Wii U era that this wasn't really working out for them. So when the Nintendo Switch was coming out, it was much easier for them to put all of their game development efforts into a single system. This came with some caveats though. Because the Switch is both a home console and a handheld, it has a lot of games that feel right to play on a home console like Breath of the Wild, and others that feel better on handheld systems like the Link's Awakening remake. The line between home console and handheld titles started to blur with this system as Nintendo has merged their markets and technology has advanced. This on its own is not a bad thing. Both the handheld and the home console side of Nintendo's brand should be represented with the Switch, considering it's a hybrid console. The problem here is that Nintendo is treating a lot of their more handheld-oriented games like they are big home console titles. Remember those two Zelda games I brought up just a second ago? Those games are the same price. Now don't get me wrong, I love Link's Awakening and the remake is absolutely gorgeous and fixes a lot of problems the original game had. I personally would have no problem paying $60 for it, which is what I did back when it came out. However, these games being the same price doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Video game pricing is a larger discussion for another day, but the Link's Awakening remake feels like a game that would have released back on the 3DS for like $40 max. I mean, you look at the company that made this remake, Grezzo, and they also made the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask remakes that were released on the 3DS. And I think that's a big problem that a lot of people have with the games Nintendo is putting out this generation. For a lot of people, especially the more casual audiences, it's hard to justify spending that home console price tag on a game that feels like it would be developed for a cheaper handheld if Nintendo still made those. To see another example of this, let's take a look at what Nintendo has put out this year so far. Another Code Recollection is a visual novel puzzle game akin to something like Professor Layton, at least from what I gathered in the demo. This is a game that fits perfectly on a handheld system. You play it on the couch, next by the fireside, relaxing, a cozy experience. And it's a relatively smaller title, they're remakes of a DS and Wii game, so, seems like it would be a pretty budget. The game is $60. Mario vs. Donkey Kong is a remake of the GBA original, including enhanced visuals and a few new levels. It doesn't have a lot of content, but from what I played in the demo, it's a pretty fun but easy puzzle platformer. It's pretty obvious that this is just supposed to be a filler game to fill out Nintendo's yearly schedule, so I wouldn't imagine it would be too much. $50?! Princess Peach Showtime is a new take on Princess Peach, where she dons a variety of costumes, giving her different abilities to use in a 2D platforming adventure. Now, this game is pretty unique and fun from what I played in the demo, and what I've seen online. However, a lot of people have been saying it feels like a game that would be released on the 3DS, so I don't think it would be full price, maybe $50, $40, oh yeah, it's $60, you get the joke at this point. Now granted, Princess Peach Showtime does have more of a reason to be $60 since it's Nintendo's big game for this half of the year, and it is completely original. However, I feel like people would be a lot more willing to jump into these titles if they were released for $30 or $40. I don't have any of these games yet, but if they were that price, I know I would get them, especially Princess Peach Showtime, because that game genuinely does look really cool. And I also like how Nintendo is putting out demos for these games, so you can see if you like it or not. But still, I feel like only the hardcorest of hardcore Nintendo fans are picking up these games at launch because there's really not a lot to them. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that they are handheld feeling games released for full price. The last thing to talk about with the games is that a lot of Nintendo's games that were almost exclusively on handhelds aren't able to adapt to being on a home console. Pokemon is the clearest example of this. All of the mainline Pokemon titles have been released on exclusively handheld systems, but now Game Freak is being thrust into a home console market with the Switch. A lot of people have been saying that games like Sword and Shield and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl feel like souped up 3DS games, and that's simply because that's what Game Freak is used to developing. Now, I'm not trying to defend Game Freak here, I mean Pokemon is the highest grossing media franchise of all time, so they certainly could have put more effort into those titles. However, it still forced Game Freak to adapt and create games that they weren't at all used to developing. They've sort of been taking steps in the right direction with Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, but it's still clear that they have some work to do to create a true home console Pokemon game. Home console and handheld games are very different than they may seem, even if the gap between them is bridged closer as technology advances. However, Nintendo has had a hard time differentiating between these two types of games when it comes to pricing and how they present these games. Not to mention, Nintendo has had basically no competition in the handheld market with the Switch. Well, that last statement wasn't entirely true. There are other handheld competitors like the Steam Deck and, I guess, the PlayStation Portal? Mobile gaming used to be a big handheld competitor in Nintendo's eyes, but I think everyone has realized now that mobile gaming is a very different beast. Sure, there are games that could be categorized as more hardcore experiences on mobile, as well as games that are popular on PC and consoles getting mobile versions like Genshin Impact. However, I don't think mobile gaming will ever take over handheld game consoles because, well, does this competition look fierce to you? My point with all of this is to say that the Switch doesn't have much competition in the handheld space. Its biggest rival I'd say is the Steam Deck, and even then I'd say those systems are attempting to do completely different things. The Steam Deck is more about taking games that are already out and just making them available on the go. There aren't games being developed exclusively for the Steam Deck, nor are developers usually keeping the Steam Deck in mind when making their games. And then on the other side you have the Switch, which is trying to create an environment centered around the console with exclusive games and whatnot. I think handheld gaming is starting to go more in the direction of what the Steam Deck is doing. Instead of creating games with the purpose of being on a handheld system, developers just make games, and then they can be played on the go if you have a Steam Deck. This isn't a bad thing, but I know a lot of people out there really like having a handheld-focused gaming environment. I got a lot of people commenting on my last video about how they loved the 3DS and missed what Nintendo was doing in that era. And to some extent, I can't help but agree. Handheld gaming is certainly going in a new direction, but whether or not this is a good thing is up to your personal opinion. However, I think no matter what side you're on, it's clear that a lot of handheld gaming fans weren't completely satisfied with what the Switch had to offer. If Nintendo wants to stay relevant in the next generation, they need to try to fix a lot of problems that people have with the Switch, especially the ones I talked about in this video. It's unclear what exactly Nintendo is cooking up behind the scenes, but I think pretty much everyone agrees it's some sort of Switch 2. No matter what happens though, Nintendo is going to want to be going all out in an attempt to compete with or overtake the Nintendo Switch's success. And that's exciting to me. My hope is that Nintendo can appeal to the audience that wasn't exactly satisfied with what the Switch had to offer. Regardless of what they do, I'm definitely going to be there talking about it. I'm excited to see what the future holds, and I have high hopes for what Nintendo's gonna come out swinging with. I've been MJ the Shiny Hunter, and thanks for watching. Hey guys, before I end the video, I just want to give a big thank you to everyone who watched my last video about the 3DS. I truly was not expecting the video to do this well, so the fact that so many people supported it means a lot to me. Obviously, I've had videos that, have performed well before, but most of it was just like meme stuff, things I don't really care about all that much. That's not to say I didn't like making those videos, but this is just something that I was super passionate about, so it really does mean a lot that all these people were willing to watch it. It's been a big motivator in me making content moving forward, and I have a lot of things in the works, so stay tuned. Finally, for one last announcement, I wanted to say that I now have a Discord server. The link will be in the description. It's a place where all of you guys can hang out and chill, and I'll be there, talking and things. I'll also give updates, more frequent updates on my projects, so if that sounds like it could be fun to you, the link is in the description below. Anyways, that's it from me, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, fine. Did you hear this? Family function.
Seriously?
Yeah, and there's...
Oh, wait. Lads, come on.